Well, folks, here we are again. Engine's back out, just about ready to pull the transmission out. I think I might have kind of maybe figured out what's up with first gear. I'll show you that here in a second, but I figured since I got the engine out, I got a clear view of underneath the car here, the dirty view of underneath the car, please don't judge me, but I figured I'd go through and talk about a couple of things I've done to help prevent wheel hop, and how I've kind of set the, not really set the suspension up, but more set the mounts up here on the car. I won't get into every detail, but just kind of a starter point on what can help prevent wheel hop. But before I crawl underneath the car here with the camera, I'm going to show you a couple videos here. Just a brief demonstration on the difference in the suspension or the mounting setups on two different cars here. But yeah, let's roll that. Now this is Mike Fritz's car. I hope he doesn't mind that I used this footage, but just check out how the muffler shakes. It's rattling the deck lid. It looks almost like the fenders are about ready to come off. Now Mike is basically rubber mounted here. He does have a bird rear engine support. If you look down underneath the car, you can kind of see this. You can see this orange oil filter, then a little shiny rod, and there's a black bar that runs all the way across over to another little shiny rod. That's the Berg rear. It's just got a rubber mount on it. He did say that he changed the rubber mount on the bar and it helped out some, but you can still see that, you know, the thing is just rattling like crazy. Now this one is Ryan McCoy's. He's all solid mounted, and just look how nice that car leaves. Picks the front end up and just shoots forward. Nothing really shakes on the car. And I'm not really sure what they were running for tires, blow those up or not. I'll just go back and take another look at Mike's car. Yeah, it's hard to tell if they're running slicks, or both of them are running either a DOT M&H slick, street slick, or a straight up and M&H slick. Yeah, but Ryan's car just leaves nice and smooth, squats a little bit, picks the front end up, and just goes. Okay, first is the solid engine mount setup. This used to have a strap. You can see there's a couple holes up here that ran up and over the bell housing. When I first started putting engines and transmissions in this car, I was unable to actually run my fingers in between the bell housing and the firewall of the car here. Kind of, or an indication that the frame horns might have sagged a little bit throughout the years of going down the road. At one point I was running polyurethane engine mounts. The car still kind of shook, but when you solid mount the front, or this is the rear, when you solid mount the rear of the car, you want to solid mount the front of the car too. And I'm going to crawl underneath there here in a minute and show you what I got going on there, because I've got a whole different setup up front. But if you don't solid mount the rear and the front, you will bust nose cones. But I was still having problems, especially when I went to the Berg 5-speed and I went with the bounce that Berg sent me. Even just going and letting the clutch out, the whole car would shake. It didn't do that once I started solid mounting. The first key and thing you want to do is solid mount the car if you're going to be doing any type of racing. You know, it's just you're going to just eliminate a lot of the headaches. The next thing that I did that helped, since at the early stages of setting up and I wasn't running a roll cage at the time, is what they call a Ren-Kafer bar. Let's see if I can get some more light underneath the car here. Now the Ren-Kafer bar, you can see I've actually got it mounted to this, I think this was a bug pack solid mount deal. Probably find it through Empty now. But it actually runs up and hooks to the shock tower. You kind of see it right there. See what happens if I zoom in a little bit here. And that top bar runs from shock tower over to the other shock tower. And I've got another turnbuckle over here. Now my system or setup here is basically my custom fabrication. And you know, after getting it all done, I mean, it works. It seems to work well for me, but I kind of wish I would have maybe gone with a little bit bigger round stock. And then I also made a custom mount there so I can run my oil cooler. This is an early car with an early pan, and the shock towers actually point, the bolts. My finger in here. The bolts actually point at each other. Some of your later model cars, I don't know when they changed the shock tower locations. It could have been after the oval windows. This is a 1956 bug. Maybe it was a 1958 or early 60s. The shock towers and the bolts actually kind of point more towards the center tunnel. So you kind of, it'll be a little harder. This was easier for me to fabricate, but on the other pans, it's going to be a little more difficult to fabricate. And I've got Hubert sitting over here, and that's a 63. And I'm going to have to do a little tougher fabrication on that car because the shock tower bolts, like I said, they kind of point towards the tunnel. Something I failed to mention earlier, I forgot to point out the reason, kind of the theory behind how this Kafer bar or traction bar works. The turnbuckles come down here to the frame horns, and everything bolted to this end of the car. Transmission is bolted to this, bolted up front, and the engine is actually mounted to the transmission. There is no engine mounts unless you do the Berg style, which really isn't a mount, it's more of a support. The rear, I should say, they have the rear engine stabilizer that Gene Berg makes. I tried it and it didn't work. But the idea is to keep these things from dancing up and down, because that's the one thing that really causes a wheel hop. And well, if these things are moving, that means your engine's shaking too and rattling and rolling. So the idea is to have these turnbuckles come down and support those. I got one coming this way and one coming this way. And the other idea of using the turnbuckles is you can preload these. Some people like to preload them by pulling them up. I preload mine by pushing them down, or I have in the past, because like I mentioned earlier, my transmission belt housing was actually touching up here. So now that I've been preloading these down, I showed you the little gap I have there now. It'd be interesting to actually measure like a new car, which is probably hard, and find a new car to see what the gap is supposed to be on there. It probably didn't help either in the past. The car was pretty rusty. The body may have sagged some. I've, since then I've actually went and put all new sheet metal in, and hopefully it doesn't sag anymore. But yeah, that's the basic idea of the Kafer bar. There are a couple other companies that do make those Ren Kafer bars for the later style pans, and one of them I believe, I'd have to look up, see if I can find a part number, but I believe MP has one on the market. A friend of mine, Prescott Phillips, used to make one, and I keep bugging him. He's gonna make another string of them, another run of them, but he keeps saying no. He says he's busy enough. But yeah, if you're listening, Prescott, and you want to make a short production run, I'm sure you'll sell quite a few of them. So we'll mosey on up to the front of the transmission here, and I'll show you how I have that mounted. Okay, down underneath the car here. And like I said, it's a little dirty. I don't know how people keep stuff so clean. But let's zoom. You see this aluminum mount? This used to be a rubber mount. And I actually had my neighbors, back when I lived at my other house, turn some of those up for me. But this is a intermediate housing mount. And this one is produced by Gene Berg. It was needed to run the 5-speed. Because the nose cone on the 5-speed was different. It did not mount to the front mount. And on this car, you can see I've got a brace welded in here, and I actually had a later style front nose cone mount put on the car here. So the intermediate mount, like I said, on the 5-speed was needed because the nose cone on the 5-speed did not bolt to the car. And typically, I like this a lot better, the bolting to the front of the car, because like I said, you're not going to wind up with a busted nose cone. You kind of see the nose cone mount right here. That's right here. That's where it would actually bolt to the car. But instead, we got this mount here so you can mount this intermediate housing. And again, these things here, these round circle mounts, were rubber when I first put this system in. And thanks to the old neighbors, the lovely Lave made those up for me. But yeah, this is a really nice setup here. They make a couple different styles of this intermediate one. They actually have one that welds in. It just welds right to the frame horns here. But I like this one where it actually goes down and around and then mounts over here. So I actually have to figure out if I'm going to try to make one for Hubert over there, or if I'm just going to have my daughter buy another, or buy one from the Bergs, which would be easier and faster. This is actually a really nice unit. But yeah, this is like I said, an intermediate mount, and it is solid mounted to the car. It's been like this for years with no problems. And like I said, I got the 4-speed in here now, and this does work with the 4-speed. The only thing you have to do is if you were building your transmission, or let your transmission builder know, but these lower studs down here, you actually have to have longer ones put in, which these, you know, if you got several transmission cases lying around, you can actually just steal the studs from the top of the transmission case, because the ones on the top are longer than the ones that are on the bottom, and you just change them out. It works just well. I had the 5-speed set up like that, and I did this 4-speed setup like that. But last but not least is torsion housing here. You have a torsion spring in there, and it's just a big round thing. I got a couple on the shelf. I will show it to you. But I believe I have a 30 millimeter in this car, because I have the longer ones. Again, the early pans were different. They take the longer ones, like the late Super Beetles. I don't know why they switched back to the shorter ones, you know, in the 60 era cars, to the going back to the long ones. But yeah, this takes a longer one. So I believe I put a 30 millimeter torsion in here. I believe factory is 26, and I know a lot of the guys with the shorter springs run a 28 millimeter. But I've got a couple up here on the shelf, and I'll show those to you. Okay, here's a stock long torsion spring. I believe this is actually out of like a Volkswagen thing. I had ordered these, or not ordered, I had these pulled out of a salvage yard, thinking that they were 28 millimeter. Someone told me that the things were bigger, and maybe they are. Maybe they are bigger than like the Bugs. But I've actually got, you know, someone put right. It's 24 millimeter. Let's take a look. Let's measure these things. We'll measure this. Okay, I'll have to correct myself. Those are 24 millimeter. So maybe I was looking for 26 millimeters. These are shorter versions by Sway Away, and these are much heavier. Actually, yeah, they got a Sway Away written right on them. Something I ordered off of either the Samba or eBay. It's hard to say. What does that say on here? Yep, it says Sway Away, which is SWAY, the letter A, WAY.com. That's where you can find them. And these bad boys are, okay, these are 28 millimeter. I'll show that to you guys. 28 millimeter. So yeah, I thought I ordered 30, but nope. It's a good thing I looked at them again. But yeah, looks like I ordered 28s. So yeah, these will be going in Hubert, and if 24 millimeter is the factory size, they'll be a little bit more stiffer. It's kind of think, I say, torsion springs. They work by twisting. So that'll stiffen up the back of the car, especially if you're going to be running like a slick. I always forget since I'm dyslexic, but and you know, if somebody out there is listening to this, and I'm wrong at saying this, please bloop it down below so everybody else will know. But when you run a slick, it's best to have a stiffer suspension. Running a street tire, it's better to have a softer suspension. And that all works for weight transfer. You know, the idea is to try to get all the weight on the rear tires so you can get the most traction as possible. And if you got a really loose suspension with street tires, it's going to, you know, plant more weight on the street tire, hoping to get the best traction. But with slicks, you know, since you don't really need to do that, they're already really sticky. I guess it's best to have the suspension set up a little stiffer. It'll be interesting to see how the car rides. My car, you know, with the stiffer springs, and man, it's so many years ago since I did that. I don't know if I've got 28 or 30 millimeter in the back of this thing. I'd actually have to take them out and test them, or measure them like I just did. But I don't plan on doing that anytime soon. It's not the easiest process to do that, because you got to make sure you get your spring plates back in the same angle. Otherwise the car can ride lopsided, or it could ride too high or ride too low. And we'll be doing that soon. If you guys are interested to see how that process is done, leave a comment down below, because it won't be too long. We'll be doing it with Hubert here. Hubert is my daughter's 63 Volkswagen Bug, and we're going to try to set him up as close as possible to like Simon, but he'll be natural aspirated to start out with until the daughter, is more comfortable with driving the car. Then yeah, we'll probably go all out, keep making them go a little faster so she's more comfortable. But I'm going to put these away, and then I'll get back to showing you what I think was wrong with the first gear. Cross my fingers and hope that I'm right. If not, the summer's going to be wasted, because I don't think I'm going to be taking it back out again for a while. Yeah, I should point out before I put this away that these things have splines on the end there, and those splines are different from side to side. But when you raise and lower the car, that's kind of how you set those. You'll take the spring plate off and move it depending on which way you want to go, and slide it back on and clock it. And you try to clock both sides the same. But yeah, that's how you can tell. The other thing, like I said, there's a longer and a short version. Already showed you the long version's got the snout sticking out of the spring plate. If you got the shorter version, you won't have that snout. It'll just be a cap on the end there. And I'd like to put some fancier caps on there. I know the speed chrome there is fancy, but I see a lot of nicer caps on the shorter version, which I got to find, because we'll probably put them on a Hubert there. I think they're actually made out of billet aluminum, if I'm not wrong. All right, my transmission that I've decided to build here for the 4-speed. I'm running a converted first gear idler. I'm actually running an idler out of an 091 bus transmission. The 090 bus transmission first gear shares the same gear ratio as the later Type 1 transmissions, which is a 378 gear ratio. The bus transmission one is supposed to be 2 millimeters wider than the Type 1, hopefully making it stronger. So I did the conversion on mine, and I actually got I can't show you, it's still in the car, but I actually got, took the amount off of the first gear idler. Since it's bigger all around, and it won't spin, and it needs to spin. So you have to machine it. You got to find somebody to turn it down to make it fit. Not knowing that the slider, this thing here, is a little bit different. You have to actually make this a little bit, you got to convert this a little bit. Thanks to Prescott again, he told me you got to take 40 thousandths off of this in order to make it work, which makes sense. This is the slider, and it slides back and forth on the slider hub. There's more to this, but I don't have it on here right now. But it slides like when you shift your gear or shift your car, it slides for first gear and it locks in. But since this ring, you can see it's shiny on here, but since that ring is thicker, I wasn't getting fully engaged. And then when you go to second, this slides back on second. And then there's one of these similar to this for third and fourth, because this will ride in the center, which would be your neutral. It has your ring on here for your shift fork, which I thought that's where my problem was before. I noticed that my shift fork was pretty sloppy in there, so I put a thicker one in there to make it less sloppy. Come to find out, that wasn't my problem. The car still popped out. Now I'm still kind of confused, because I did this conversion on somebody else's transmission, and they didn't have the problem of it popping out of first gear. So maybe I got lucky on that one. I did ask Prescott if he knew if the slider hub for the old 91 would work on a Type 1, or if it was different. He said he couldn't tell me, because he's always done the conversion on the slider hub here. In case you're wondering what a 091 stack looks like, this is a gear stack missing fourth gear. This is actually out of an 091, and yeah, there's a lot going on here, but this is the 091 first and second gear. This would be third gear, but it's not the idler. These are idlers. You can see they spin freely until you lock them in with the slider. And I can do that. Here, let's set it down this way. There we go. It locked in. I noticed on this one, this is also leading me to the theory that I needed to take some off of the slider, because the gap, there's hardly any gap in between the two gears here, and I was noticing when I put my transmission together that there was a little bit more gap, and maybe in a future video I'll show you that when I get everything all apart. And if you slide this up, Slider into second here, maybe. There we go. You can see, possibly, that there is no lip on here, or what lip is on here is about what I've got on my other slider. And if I find a slider here, and this is what a slider out of a Type 1 that's not modified would look like. You can see that there's more of a lip on here. So yeah, I took over, thanks to my buddy Doug over at the Weapons Collective Edge. He actually turned that down for me. All right, yeah, that's kind of the basics. Solid mount. Very important when it comes to racing on any type of sticky tire. I really don't want to get too much into the shocks because I really haven't experimented with too many different types of shocks yet. I know there's, you know, two-way adjustables, four-way adjustables, front, rear. What I do run is a oil-filled shock on the front of the car, just your standard confab. I was running a 90-10 shock there for a while, but I don't know if it was just the 90-10 shock was old and wore out, or if it just wasn't good for street driving because the car banged every little bump here. I live in the wonderful state of Michigan, which has beautiful scenery all over the place. We'll be seeing that here shortly, and Sick Michigan miles, hopefully. But some of the roads, especially in your metropolitan areas, can be full of potholes. The rear, I am running just a gas-filled shock. They're a KBY gas shock, and you can find the number by early 80s four-wheel drive S10s. It would be the shock that they run on the front of an S10. I run them on the back of the Beetle, but that's basically, I'm running the KYB gas adjust on the back and just oil filled on the front. I haven't really experimented with anything other than that. I've had pretty good success. My best 60-foot times, I think I've been down in the 1.5s when I run those 11-second quarter miles, but generally I think it's more like 1.6 to 1.8. Your 60-foot is very important, so maybe if I ever get the car figured out and start running consistent and I want to go faster, I may start trying some different shocks on the rear and the front of the car. If you want to share what your guys' shocks are, your combinations, please put them down below. Always looking for recommendations. But until then, keep shifting those gears, keep cruising, and always enjoy the ride. Let's move on out.